what is happening in the myth? Hades wanted to have Persephone as his wife, so he simply kidnapped her despite all the prohibitions and laws. When the plague began and the gods were imploring him to bring Persephone back, Hades did not care. Even when Zeus told him to return her, he was firm in his position. He made Persephone secretly eat the seed and finally attached her to him. Pluto achieved its goal at any cost. Persephone returned to Earth, but not as a simple girl, but as the ruler of the underworld. She went through a huge transformation. Pluto in aspects and in the house forces us to act by storm, breaking all the rules and obstacles. There must be a gross imposition of our will or that of another person. Either you are crushed or you will crush the other. Pluto is a very contrasting planet. There are no agreements, no compromise. Yet there is a pure will, a pure desire. Let's look at the myth from Persephone's perspective. What happened to her? We can say that before she met Hades, she was nobody at all. She had no status, nothing. The abduction by Hades caused a deep transformation. She became the queen of the vast underworld, the kingdom, the abode of the dead, and she obtained a status. But before that happened, she experienced enormous stress, tension, and destruction. Here, another characteristic of Pluto is revealed. When we deal with Pluto, obtaining the desired result will always pass through stress, tension, and total transformation. Pluto in house 1 at the lower pole. I am a hostage of myself. I destroy myself. I put pressure on myself. I create catharsis. Pluto in house 2. I am a hostage to circumstances related to money. Pluto in house 3. I am a hostage of situations related to information, neighbors, communication, gossip, rumors. If Pluto in the house manifests on the lower pole, it gives stagnation, the impression that you cannot do anything. Pluto in house 1. I have a feeling of being imprisoned. I am stuck. All my initiative is destroyed, cut off at the root. When I want to undertake something, it causes a crisis. The catharsis occurs and sweeps everything away. Pluto in house 2. I am a hostage of financial problems. I try to gain some money, but everything collapses and I become a shadow. Pluto in house 6 on the upper pole. Improving health must go through yoga and qigong. In other words, Pluto in its pure form is always a very powerful tension. Mars is the second ruler of Scorpio, the sign of the Channel of Pluto. Consequently, Pluto on the upper pole stands for pressure, strength, survival, surpassing oneself, and autonomy. Venus and the Moon oppose Pluto according to the essences and therefore harm Pluto. Venus embodies freebies, prosperity, satisfaction, and the desire to save and preserve. The Moon, in turn, comfort, attention, security, the comfort zone. The house of Pluto forbids gifts, prosperity, and desire to accumulate. There should be no attachments or clinging. If we try to keep and preserve something and build comfort in the house of Pluto, the planet will act according to the principle of the mine. Everything will explode at some point, or the sphere of the house will be constantly tense because we should not cling to anything at all, but only progress. If you understand that you are losing something, but that this something is hindering you, do not be afraid of change. Pluto in house 4. You have to move, but it's heartbreaking for you to leave the apartment. Accept that you have to move on. Pluto is the catalyst in chemistry. It accelerates everything and gives development. There should be no obligations in the house of Pluto or attachments that would harm you. Pluto in the 7th house. If there is a dependence on the partner that weighs you down and restricts your life, then there is a reason to reconsider the relationship because it will get worse later. Another option is to transfer Pluto to a higher level of realization. We have to constantly lose the comfort zone, transform, change things in the house of Pluto if we try to make the situation comfortable, safe, and cumulative. Then Pluto will simply tear up, burst. Venus and the Moon are in exile and fall in Scorpio, the sign of the channel of Pluto, if you give in to emotions. To the Moon, it will cause stress, the negative. Man very often clings to the comfort zone, to the Moon or Venus to stability, but all this leads to the total negative, especially in the second half of life, because the superior planets get activated on 100% in the second half of life. You want to earn a certain amount of money according to house 2, and you start moving towards this goal. Consider the upward arrow. Pluto will stop everything. There will be the negative. Even if you earn some money, you will lose twice as much. Pluto acts according to the principle of a certain magnitude of movement. Imagine that you need to raise your hand before to hit. First, you need to concentrate the energy and then send it, direct it towards your goal. Pluto in house 2 stands for investments, etc. But pay attention to one important thing. I can't use other people's resources directly. If I take a freebie, a gift, I'll pay for it later. This is why Pluto in house 2 imposes the following scenario. I accumulate my resources, then I invest it in someone else's, and after that I can have access to it using it. You have set the goal of earning $1,000 and you have Pluto in house 2. This will not work in a simple way. Okay, you will earn this amount, but later you will spend $2,000. You will lose more than you made. In our example, you have to earn $200, $300 and then to invest them in a joint business. And after that, you will make $1,000. We constantly use someone else's resources here. We focus, we make a preparation move, and only then do we receive what is ours. Let's remember, we invest energy for the performance. We raise our hand to hit. Otherwise, there will be a setback, a loss. The principle of Pluto is the principle of transformation, oxidation, decomposition, and degradation. Ancient philosophers said that the smell of victory was always rotten. Why? Very often, when we achieve results, we are satisfied with that and do not go further. We turn into a swamp. This is the principle of the decomposition of Pluto, of its lower pole. Either there is degradation and there is no development, or we transform the original substance. The principle of transformation according to Pluto is the following. We want to make a drink, a black tea, with sugar. The process cannot be simple. We have to mix the tea leaves with hot water. The leaves will swell thanks to the boiling water and will liberate taste, aroma, and color. Then we add the sugar. Several components must be combined. Pluto and its esoteric meaning. The graphic astrological symbol of Pluto is the crescent of the soul, which connects the ring of the spirit, which is the symbol of the sun, to the cross of matter. Pluto represents death and rebirth, the greatest destructive force in the universe. This planet is the last thread linking us to our ego, because Pluto is precisely the planet that completely erases it. Uranus shakes the ego, Neptune rejects it, and Pluto brings final death to it. Since most of us are immersed in a close relationship with our ego and are generally unable to let go of it, we tend to have many fears and dark forebodings about Pluto. Pluto is an inexorable force and we cannot avoid it. Out of fear, however, we instinctively try to exercise some control to avoid or protect ourselves from its energies. If the energies of Uranus can be compared to a powerful instant explosion, an electric discharge, lightning, and if the energies of Neptune can be compared to a raging mass of water, which like a sacred flood immerses the person in the intensity of her experiences, in the perceptions of the higher worlds, periodically making it descend into the depths of the unconscious, obscuring the consciousness of reality with a black veil. Then the action of Pluto is similar to an atomic explosion, which crushes and destroys all previous forms of life. It is a good thing because these forms were already dead. Pluto will not explode anything that should be preserved, what should continue to live. It destroys what man and even the entire nation cannot destroy and change by themselves. As the spirit develops, man acquires a new instrument of control and conscious will awakens. This is what the symbol of the sun represents, and this is why the individual cannot be identified, described, and evaluated by the solar sign. Full consciousness and awareness will manifest themselves when a person feels the right to manifest her individuality and act as she wishes. The Martian will then fade into the background and almost no longer show itself, while the solar will come to the foreground. At this level of evolution, quite high, man demonstrates total freedom and total independence in relation to external life, as well as complete humility before the supreme will. As man's spiritual evolution progresses, he becomes aware of the futility of struggle and develops the necessary humility in the face of the inevitable circumstances of life. We can say that he is a flexible and wise person. Thus, after some life experience, the individual acquires inner freedom and independence from the conditions of the outside world. Only great sages possess this quality of inner freedom. It appears when the individual moves from passive humility to active internal acceptance. Only then can he adapt and creatively manifest himself in all conditions of life. This is the freedom we are looking for, and it is very precious. At this level of her development and with well-aspected Pluto, the person is courageous, determined, and full of energy, which gives her great potential for development and the ability for maximum spiritual rebirth. What we should remember is that after having incarnated, we learned to largely trust our illusions. The illusion, for example, that we are independent individuals and not linked to anyone else and to nothing else in the universe, as well as the illusion that we are not eternal and omnipotent spiritual beings. Neptune can make boundaries transparent, so we can see that these beliefs don't match reality. The bottom line is that it will always be Pluto who will bring down the walls. The only way to interact with Pluto's energy is to trust it. We must understand that the areas of life in which we believe the greatest control is required are in fact those where we must instead completely relinquish control. We must have faith that when Pluto's energy is at work, we are not losing anything truly real, that whatever Pluto is going to tear apart has served its purpose, and that we no longer need it. Living in illusion is meaningless, but the path to enlightenment is too painful. That is the tragedy of human existence. However, esoteric thought can only be understood by devoting ourselves to it with our whole being. Quotes and dogmas won't help here. The spiritual journey is an endless process that removes the fear of death. Man develops a wise attitude to life when he begins to take advantage of every opportunity to become aware of the traits of his own personality, when he begins to regard his fellow men as temporary companions, as teachers giving him lessons of life. Man must have the courage to step out of his comfort zone, to recognize that the mind is a vast magical power and that it is never too late to evolve. Neither our age nor our past is important. The main thing is to know that spiritual perfection gives power over the physical world. This knowledge is a reward in itself, and it is a deep desire of the heart that impels man to seek it, a calling of the heart that could not be satisfied with anything else. Transformation, change, new form or level, the development. Operations, plastic surgery. Transformation is necessary and obligatory in different ways depending on the house of Pluto. Pluto in the first house, I change my appearance through plastic surgery. Gender transition is a radical change, but this example is valid here. A radical change of hair color, wearing a challenging style of clothing, change of the name, of the first name, an important note. Pluto in the first house will manifest more intensely than the ascendant in Scorpio, if, in the case of the ascendant in Scorpio, there is another planet in the first house other than Pluto, fire in the broad sense of the word. It is highly recommended that people with Plutonian energies burn something, making campfires, fireplaces, burning candles, decorating the house with pictures of fire. This is one of the ways to bring in Pluto's energies. We also speak of the fire of passion, of enjoyment, of insatiability. Everything that Pluto touches becomes unfathomable, immeasurable. Venus conjunction Pluto. I want a lot of money. If I can't get it, in the case of a square or an opposition, I deny other people's money. I can't use other people's resources. The moon in Scorpio understands only harsh, energetic, and domineering language. I relax only in tension. I communicate with the world through tension. The moon in Scorpio destroys anything other. It will show attention through practical action. It won't be particularly emotional. It can be cruel, and that's okay for it because it doesn't waste its energy in vain. If it sees that it is impossible to help a person, if the person does not listen to it at all, to the moon in Scorpio, if the person is not receptive to its practical advice, it will not show any interest. On the lower pole of Pluto, there is negation, a denial. The sun in Scorpio, I deny myself. The moon in Scorpio, I deny my needs. The world is so bad that I don't accept it. Venus in Scorpio, I deny money, relationships. But once again, everything is complex. You have to undo the layers. Venus in Scorpio, I want a lot of money. This is its basic theme, but if Venus is afflicted, the person wants money but is ashamed or afraid of it, and it weighs on her. A collapse will therefore occur. According to the moon in Scorpio, we transform this insatiability into goals, achievements, etc. Note that we do not break the moon or Venus in Scorpio. We find use for them. In any case, this insatiability for money will always be there, but either it will be stuck and hidden, so the native will be stuck himself, or we unpack it and transform it into goals and motivation. You can hear sometimes difficult, complicated stories. Pluto may try to drag you into its funnel. I will throw myself out of the window. I will not eat. I will die. And you will stay there without me. There are often such contrasting behaviors. But you know what? When Pluto really wants to do something with itself, when there is deep trauma, pain, it does not tell anyone about its plans. It commits the act silently. Whereas when it provokes, it knows the scenario of further development, what it will tell you if you don't believe him. It is believed that Pluto governs the questions of sexuality in the chart. It is responsible for sexual energy and the ways of its manifestation, for instance, tantric sex, or other ways of realizing sexual energy, and there are many. The preferences in sex will be shown by other planets, in particular by Mars.